you gotta choose an AP research topic. Yes, choosing a research topic, the thing that you're gonna spend the next year of your life researching, seems a little bit daunting at first. Believe me, it is. So when you're choosing a research topic, begin with a wide range of topics that you find interesting. Sports, movies, books, really pretty much anything, and it can be just about as specific as you want. Once you find this magical list of things, what you've got to do is you've got to draw them all out and then try to find connections between them, such as sports, movies, sports movies. Once you've found some connections between them, such as, for example, artificial intelligence and forestry, in my case, using AI and machine learning to predict deforestation. Good choice. So once you've found these connections and you find a couple that are particularly interesting, continuing with the artificial intelligence and forestry example from earlier, develop it a little bit. Like, for example, artificial intelligence is used in order to predict deforestation by using previous deforestation maps in order to predict future deforestation maps. So do this with multiple different combinations of interests, top 3 or so that you found. So pick the ones out of this that have become the most interesting to you or plausible overall. So when you're doing this, remember, the first thing that you think of is most likely what 100 other people have thought of when they made this exact same connection when they were doing the exact same thing you're doing right now. So don't do that. So one thing that you have to remember is that the first thing you think of is most likely the first thing that many people think of when they make the same connection you just did, doing the exact same thing you're doing right now. So instead of just using the first thing you think of, think deeper. Think of not 1, not 2, but 3 different applications of these connections that you've made, and then go with the second or third one. Now, if the first one does seem the most interesting, and it seems enough out there that you could probably use it, then use it, go for it. But it's usually safer and a little bit less common to use your second or third idea. So if you really want to be original, go with that second or third idea. All right, now once you've chosen this topic set, you've got to choose a narrowed down topic. One thing that I'd like to mention before I get into this is peer review will become incredibly helpful to you during your time in AP research. Make sure to use it and start early. Using peer review in your topic description is going to be incredibly helpful for figuring out how to do it for the rest of the year. So once you've chosen this discipline and narrowed down idea, you need to figure out exactly what you'll be researching, or not necessarily exactly, but a more defined, fleshed out idea. So brainstorm in a group. Talk about an idea that you have, list out a title and maybe a little bit of what you would want to do with that idea to a group of people, and then accept feedback. Not negative criticism, of course, but positive criticism that may be useful in developing a better idea or improving upon the one you currently have. So after you've decided on a handful of topics that you like, maybe your top 2, top 3 if you're really into it, you need to consider a couple things. Firstly, is your topic logical and does it make sense to study? Like, for example, studying something that is completely harebrained and out there may sound interesting right now, but once you get into study it and there are no articles on it whatsoever and there's no way to actually do any valuable research on this topic, you're going to have a really hard time and you're going to want to come back and switch topics. You don't want that to happen to you. Secondly, right off of that, will there be enough evidence to actually research? Because remember, you're not just search and reporting like you were in seminar. You've actually got to take research that exists already and turn it into something new. That requires a lot of prior research. And unless you're planning on doing a lot of that prior research yourself, you're going to want to consider if some already exists. And then thirdly, would you be able to come to a feasible conclusion from that? So by feasible conclusion, I don't necessarily mean a 100% finite, this is exactly how it is. I mean more of, this is my take on how this is, or this is a solution to a problem that I see. Not necessarily a conclusion to a problem, but maybe a solution or a partial solution to a problem that exists today. For example, my project had to do with search and rescue. However, I was planning originally on doing search and rescue drones that were controlled by an automated system. However, this would have taken much too long for my short year in research. And although I would have liked to do that, I couldn't because it just wasn't able to reach a feasible conclusion. Instead, I decided to do research on charging stations for these search and rescue drones so that the deployment time is considerably reduced. Similar topic, more feasible conclusion, better outcome. Now, something that I've already said is that you're not doing a search and report. That's something that you're going to need to make sure is very clear because search and reports aren't research papers. Those are seminar papers. You wrote those for an entire year. Now it's time for research. It's called research. Do research and report on a new idea. Don't necessarily search and report, search and create. Creating that new idea is essentially what research is about. So if you can manage to find a topic where you can create that new idea, you're already miles ahead of those hundreds of people who just decided to search and report and didn't come up with any sort of new idea. And then last thing on these things that you're going to need to consider list is, has it been studied a ton? Like, for example, if you're studying something to do with soccer or something to do with the Olympics maybe, has that specific topic or controversy or whatever it may be been studied hundreds and hundreds of times? Are there too many papers on it where you cannot find a niche necessarily that your paper could fill? If you can't find that niche and you can't find that hole in research that exists that you think you can fill, don't study it. It's gonna be a waste of your time. Okay, so now that you've chosen these one, maybe two topics that you're interested in, you have to come to a finite point here. You need to focus on 4 main points for your research project. 1, what are you researching? That's your focus. Exactly what will you be focusing on? You're not focusing on dinosaurs, you're focusing on what was the sale of the Spinosaurus used for. That's a focus. Dinosaurs is a topic that is very different than a focus. That needs to be very defined before you start your research, or you're going to flounder for weeks, maybe months even. Next, you need to figure out the purpose of your research project. Why is this important? If this isn't important to you, it's not important to anybody else. It will be important to someone else if it is important to you. And if it's important to you, you will spend much more time and be much more devoted to researching it. That is one of the main things that I would like to say. Next thing you need to consider is purpose. Why is your research important? If it's not important to you, most likely you're not going to enjoy it all that much and you're not going to have a good time in research if you're trying to study it. What you're going to need to do is figure out, is this research important? And is it important to you? Is it important to you is a quality of life question that you need to ask yourself so that you don't end up stuck on a research project that you don't like 3 months from the deadline and having to completely restart. You don't want that to happen. Feasibility is another major point that I would like to push. Trying to do something too big or too grand during your time at research, remember, it's only 1 year, is going to just end up with lost time, not met goals, and very unhappy researcher. So if you're trying to research something, think about it. You're only going to be in class for a few hours a week. Out of class time is up to you. However, if you know you're only going to spend 30 minutes a week out of class, don't try to do a massive research project. Maybe get a little smaller, fill a bit of a smaller niche in a similar field, or maybe fill the same niche just in a smaller capacity like I did in my research project. Or if you're going to spend 6 or 7 hours out of class a week and you're going to dedicate yourself to that throughout the entire year, you can focus a little bit bigger. Don't go too big necessarily, but you can do a little bit more with your project. Maybe get an expert advisor, work on a little bit of extra work, I guess, to make your project to that little bit better. Last thing, similar to feasibility, is scope. Is your project too ambitious? Are you shooting way too big? The thing is a lot of people walk into research and think, I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna do that, I'm gonna do all these things. Usually, they don't get done. And that's because their scope is way too wide. You need to really narrow in exactly what you're doing because you only have a couple of months to do this project. And if you can get something done in those couple of months, that's great. However, getting these grand ideas done isn't going to happen for most people. That's not to discourage you, however. You can do as much work as you want and have a great research project as you want to have. However, you're not just limited to this research. You can continue after AP research is over. Me in particular, I'm continuing my project to another year, and then hopefully a year after that. You're not limited to the time constraint of a single year. You can continue this for years afterwards if you want to shoot for a much larger scope project. Just focus on one piece that can be done while you're in AP research for this 1 year. So I'm going to leave it there. One more thing that I would like to add is make sure you have fun in research. Most classes, you can't say, I had a fun year in this class. Some of them you can, especially if you like the topic. And that's the great thing about AP research is you can choose a topic that you like and focus your entire year on that. If you choose a topic that you like, you'll have fun in the class and you'll have a great year in AP research. Thank you.